Hello students, welcome to Unit 2. In this unit we talk a little bit about how we can prepare for a math class using what's known as mindset. We talk a little bit about what's mindset got to do with our success in a math class. So just remember yesterday we talked a little bit about what you think math is, kind of getting a little bit about your thoughts and feelings about what you think about math in general. A lot of times students tend to bring in some either anxiety, frustration, or fear at times. And so we want to make sure that we at least talk about it and acknowledge that sometimes not every experience in math has been a good one. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what is mathematics. I think as a math teacher, I find students sometimes don't know what mathematics is, and they instead substitute what they've seen in math classes. So let's talk about that. Math comes from a Greek word, mathema, which talks about knowledge, study, and learning. Notice there's nothing in there about formulas, but it does include the study of quantity, structure, space, and change. So what do we do with math? Well, as a mathematician, we tend to seek and use patterns. So we look for patterns and structures, and we create what are called conjectures. That's an idea that we think is going to work. We try to work and resolve whether that is a true or false statement and whether it will work or won't work. And this is where formulas are created. So we try to tie in what we see as patterns and model that using mathematical formulas. Now the reasoning can be used to provide insight, and practical math goes back as far as written records even existed. So people were doing something practical to quantify or use numbers to create structure. So we use it a lot. It's used in very many fields, and that's why for most of you, you might need it as part of your degree plan. But it's kind of some areas, like one in case pure mathematics is a field of mathematics where you do math for its own sake. There doesn't have to be an application in mind. And internet security is an example where mathematics was developed, but there wasn't a purpose for it, and then the internet came along, and now we use a lot of the crypto methods, the ways of creating codes to provide security for your internet transactions. And of course there's also something called recreational mathematics, which is just math done because it's fun. And some of you might play some games that involve some mathematics, and that would be done there too. So what I want you to see is that mathematics is used to solve problems. It's not merely used to calculate things. So how to think about mathematics? I think at times people are told you are a math person, or oh, you're just not a math person. And that creates some problems because then it means you're in a box that you can't change. Remember that math is the study of patterns and problem solving. I'll bet you've had problems in your life that you never dealt with, and yet you still completed. So maybe take a moment to think about that. What are some things in my life where I had a problem that I had to solve that I hadn't seen before? And the thinking that you use often in that can be related back to mathematics. You probably all have skills that you weren't good at previously, but maybe now you are. Maybe it's cooking, baking, maybe it's skateboarding, riding a bike. So remember, you didn't come out with all of that knowledge and all of those skills. It took some time, it took some practice, and it definitely took some learning. So the video that I had you watch for the last unit talked about Carol Dweck. She's the one who wrote a book called Mindset, and she really talked about the power of yet. And if you heard in that video, she talks a lot about the idea that I can't do this yet. If you add one word to some of those negative thoughts, it can actually change the way you think about them. Especially in math, maybe you have said, I don't understand this. And if you say, I don't understand this, and you leave it there, you're telling yourself, I can't understand this. So practice saying the word yet whenever you have one of those negative thoughts. I'm not good at this yet. It doesn't work yet. This doesn't make sense yet. Adding that word gives you the chance to say, I can learn it. I can do it. So Carol Dweck talked a little bit about the two different mindsets. One is called the fixed mindset, and because I'm a Star Wars fanatic, I've found some images related to Star Wars that help us kind of show these ideas. So be aware that the dark side of the Force, if you will, the idea of this fixed mindset tells you that intelligence or knowledge is static. If you don't know it now, you're not going to know it later. And it actually leads to this desire to look smart. So you might have had classes where there's students who just raise their hand and like, I know this, I know this. They're trying to look smart in front of everyone. Unfortunately, that creates a tendency to avoid challenges. It creates a tendency to give up easily when faced with obstacles. Remember, if you think you can't learn something, then if you try it and you can't get it perfect on the first try, it's easy to give up. So sometimes in that mindset, you might see effort as fruitless. Like if you worked hard and you didn't get all the way there, you might say, oh, what's the point? But there is a point. You're learning along the way. I think it's helpful to remember that criticism and even what we call negative feedback, feedback saying that you might have done something incorrectly, isn't something that should be ignored. If you have a fixed mindset, you would just ignore that because you could just say, I'm not a math person. And I hope you're not in this boat while you're in the bridge program, but sometimes people in this mindset tend to be threatened by the success of others. And this happens, I've seen this as a teacher in the math classroom. Students will take a test, and then some students do well, and others are frustrated that that student did well. Remember, they might just be frustrated because in their mind they're saying, well, that's a math person. I'm so frustrated that I'm not a math person. But understand that if you keep this mindset, you won't have any reason to try new things. You won't have any reason to push yourself. So let's talk just for a minute about the other side, the growth mindset. And if you're wondering, this is actually Yoda. This is not the baby Yoda from The Mandalorian, just in case you're also a Star Wars fan. So now let's talk about what's called the growth mindset, the idea that you can develop intelligence, that you can develop your skills. So if you hold this mindset, you tend to think that with time and with effort and with energy, I can grow. So if you have this mindset, you tend to embrace a challenge. You got to say, you know what? I know this is going to be hard, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to overcome. They tend to persist in the face of setbacks. Remember, your self-image is not tied to your success. So it's okay if you don't succeed right away because it's an opportunity to learn. And try to think of that. Every time you make a mistake, you learned something. You learned how not to do it. And so as long as you go back and say, you know what, let me revisit that, I think you'll be able to see some growth in your math classes as well. So remember, effort is a path to mastery. If you don't have the effort, you're not going to put in the time, which means you're not going to see any change. Please try to learn from criticism. Even with the online math program we're using, you'll see that little red bar. That is negative feedback. The green bar is what's known as positive feedback. Well, if you only see the green, that's great, but then you also aren't seeing any of the mistakes that might be there. So if you do get a red bar, take it as an opportunity to say, wait a minute, I'm getting some criticism here, but I know that it's there to make me better. And that's the goal of this program. So remember that you are in charge of your path and you're in charge of your mindset. So it's okay to change. If you initially said, I'm not a math person, now you just make sure you add the word yet. So we're going to have a short video again talking about stress. This one I think will be helpful as we come back for the next day. So bring back your thoughts and feelings about the first day of a math class. How do you feel about going to a math class? For most of you, the math class you'll be taking will be offered online, but you'll still be attending that math class. What are you going to do when you have those stressful feelings come up? So that wraps it up for this video. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and good luck with the math. We'll see you in the Math Learning Center if you do have any questions. See you soon.